for true.
Welcome to Duality Check, the podcast where two brothers embark on a journey through the realms of scientific inquiry, the mysteries of the past, and the uncharted frontiers of spirituality. Join us as we explore the wonders of our world and beyond, all while embracing the roles of curious bystanders rather than experts. Together, we'll unravel the tapestry of existence, blending the dichotomies of knowledge and wonder. Get ready to question, ponder, and delve into dualities that shape our understanding of reality on Duality Check. I'm Drew.
And I'm Dean. And this is episode number 34, Cosmic Summit. Dan Warren.
Yeah. And like usual, we'll distract ourselves from the topic at hand in the beginning here.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So
we got a bunch of little things that we want to kind of cover. Drew's been saving a bunch of little videos on Instagram.
Yeah.
I watched a really interesting video today that I want to talk about also.
Okay. I've also got the conspiracy, the McDonald's ice cream conspiracy I wanted to lay out for Dean and see what he thinks about it.
I just love the name. I don't even care how good it is.
Yeah, it's a fun one though. It's nothing serious, but you know, a little bit of corporate espionage and other things. It's fun. But yeah, thanks for joining us on episode 34. We'll get it out of the way. If you like and subscribe, if you like the video, like it, subscribe on YouTube, Rumble, follow us or share us on any of the podcast platforms.
Or on your social media. Like if there's an episode you especially enjoy, it would really help the show if you would share it with your friends.
Yeah.
Help us reach new ears. Also, if you want to help us grow, you can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and leave us a review.
Yeah, and if you want to get involved in the conversation, you have some cool stories, you think there's something that we might be interested in, email us at host@dualitycheck.net or go look at our websites, dualitycheck.net, and you'll find all the episodes there. So if they ever get taken down for whatever reason or demonetized in the future or whatever it might be, everything will be hosted on our website.
Also, if you're listening on a podcast player that doesn't support the chapter art and like the rich show notes that we do, you can always go to dualitycheck.net, click the episode that you're listening to on your podcast player, and it'll have all the links. And I also put all the images that we're referring to throughout the episodes on there. So if you ever find yourself listening, but you want to be able to follow along,
we might reference something that is visual, so that is a helpful tool. Anyways, let's pull up some videos and we'll go through a couple of quick, fun, interesting videos here.
So here's the first one. This one's just a video, so I'll leave an image for the podcast, but I will also link this Instagram video in the show notes.
Yeah, the music's unimportant at this point, but basically what we're seeing here is augmented reality technology being used on real medical patients. And in this case, they're scanning his brain, their brain. I don't know if it's a guy.
So watch how augmented reality technology is being used on real medical patients. Video credit Metavis.
It looks like they're live looking on the inside using some sort of pen or... It
looks that way. I wonder... So my understanding is you would need some pretty significant like CT scan tech or something to do like a live
power
imaging. But maybe what we're looking at here is
after the fact.
After like a detailed brain scan has been done, you load that data into an AR system.
Yes.
Now you have the patient laying out
right over there
in the system.
Yeah, right.
And now as you're like planning where to make, where to do your work on this brain surgery, you can actually look at the actual CT scan overlaid over that person
And it looks like they're going down different layers, and they can. So yeah, that's exactly what it looks like. I don't know that it would be live. That would be a lot, but yeah.
Yeah.
It looks like they have the map of it, and they can use this tool to be able to pinpoint where exactly the best place to enter is.
You know what this makes me think of?
Especially if they're looking for some sort of cancer or blood clot.
It makes me think of Neuralink. Did you see the new Lex Friedman episode? That's 8 hours long.
I started it, but I did not watch all 8 hours. Yeah.
I'm like halfway through, and that thing is pretty sick. He interviews a series of people involved in Neuralink. So he's got Elon Musk, he's got the CEO, and then I'm on the third interview, which is their head brain surgeon. But I believe they're going to have Nolan on also.
That's what it said. Yeah, they're going to have the guy who actually has the chip in his head.
The first guy with the implant.
Yeah, I watched I don't know if it's a TikTok or whatever it was, but of him playing video games with it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I haven't seen that. Seen it in action.
It's pretty cool.
What kind of game was he playing?
I think it was like a Battlefield or some sort of shooter game.
It was sophisticated enough to control that?
Well, it was. You could. It was just interesting to see that he could use it.
Right.
I don't
wasn't
think
necessarily
it was
like moving around
but the
like
potential of it.
Right.
No, he wasn't moving around like a superhuman, like a super. You know.
Because what they were saying is like
sort of
essentially the bit rate that they're getting out of it is not quite the bit rate you can get out of a fully functional, non-injured human with a keyboard and mouse.
Right.
But they anticipate as they continue to develop that it will surpass the amount of data you can put to your computer with a keyboard and mouse. Mm-hmm. At which point, he'll basically have an unfair advantage.
Well, I mean, there's already the tech to use eye tracking on PCs, right? You have a camera set up, and you have the technology to use eye tracking.
Oh.
So you can actually have where your eye is, and then click.
Yeah. Interesting. For like the fine motor aiming.
Yeah, because your eyes are going to be quicker than your hands can be.
Right.
But anyway, that's probably most games don't support that because of, unless there's like a disability or some sort of like aid to the person, and like it's the only way they can use their product. But even still, I don't know that that's like widespread right now where they're allowing that kind of interface. But you can do it on like AIM Lab. Like,
it was actually the COO, the guy who does the daily running, because Elon's the CEO. The COO, though, his interview was particularly interesting because he's such an expert. Yeah. Like, he has so much grasp of the technology all the way from the top to the bottom in his position. And he was talking a lot about how where they're going, like what they're already working on is the second chip is going to be for helping people with blindness to get vision back.
Oh, so they're going to be working with the visual cortex and all that?
Visual cortex, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, once it gets to the point where it's proven as a medical device and people are using it on a regular basis, it's something that's happening. It won't be long when the day-to-day person decides that it's useful to them, and they start allowing.
I think it's a different level of FDA approval to get it approved for
a healthy person.
Yeah.
Like
it's one thing to actually try and help someone restore functionality, but to be able to prove to the FDA that
it's safe,
it's so safe that someone who doesn't need it for medical reasons can get it. It's
totally safe to get it.
So they still have some time there before people are going to be, before they'll be able to do that. But
yeah, I don't know what the timeline looks like, but I'm assuming it'll things happen on a cascading scale, right? I mean, unless there's a ton of bureaucracy, which there is a ton of bureaucracies, but
I mean, I think rightfully so when we're talking about
of course,
messing with human brains.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, Depends on if you look at it from a libertarian point of view,
Yeah.
where the government shouldn't have any stake in your...
Sure, but that doesn't mean that without government there wouldn't be some other sort of body that
Well, of course, you're
represents people's interest.
The epitome of knowledge for
Right.
that specific thing, yeah. And you're going to look to them for advice on how to maintain your body and health and all those things. And it'll regulate.
Right.
And society itself, even without government, would regulate that.
Mm-hmm.
And they would have some sort of body that
It would just be
regulates it.
non-governmental, but there would still be bodies whose job it is to like keep companies like this
in check. Make sure they're not.
Well, keep them from
Taking advantage.
releasing completely dangerous things out into the wild. I mean, it's one thing if a person completely signs up and is completely okay with, whatever outcome happens, as the patient, but like you don't want people selling brain implants to
Anybody.
To people
Without
under
any
false
information.
pretenses, right?
Of course.
Anyway, I found the section where they were talking about the safety of it really interesting. And the section where they were talking about how Nolan's fibers pulled out and how, well, not fully, but some of them came out a little bit. They recessed, which helped them learn just how much the brain actually moves, which is interesting.
So they're going to design based on that, right?
Yeah. There was one part where they were talking about where Lex had asked him, like, is this thing removable? Like, what if someone wants it removed? And they were saying it's yes and no, it's removable, because what happens is, like, as the fibers are in there implanted, the brain will have some scar tissue that essentially grabs onto the fibers. Over time that will build. And so the longer you've had it, the more tightly your brain will hold on to those fibers. And they essentially would be able to remove the chip and then snip the fibers and like leave them.
Leave the fibers, but remove the chip.
Yeah.
So they won't be connected to an interface, but they'll be still in your head.
But they said they're working on another technique. There's this layer under the skull, but before the actual brain tissue, that is a sort of like padding. And right now they're removing that so that they can implant with the surgical needle straight into the brain tissue. But ultimately they want to be able to implant through that layer. And the reason that scar tissue is forming is because of that layer being removed.
So when they drill, they're drilling out that layer in that area.
Well, they're drilling out the skull, and then they're surgically removing a bit of that layer to get access to the direct
Fibers.
brain tissue.
Yeah, the tissues.
But because that layer is being removed, that's where the scarring happens.
Right.
It's the scarring's
As
not
it's
happening in the
free-forming.
brain tissue because
I
they have that all 3D scanned, mapped out, all the vessels, all the arteries in there. And so like
There's
they
a
know
layer that's
exactly
growing
where they're
back,
targeting.
and it's holding on. It's like acting as like almost like a vapor barrier for the brain. Like it's growing back and it's creating a seal around those fibers. So as it's being pulled out, that layer is holding on to it. I see. Okay.
Yeah. I wonder too, what are the implications for like what if someone plays sports, like
And they get hit.
yeah, like what happens, like how much more vulnerable are you to brain injury, like being active? He hasn't asked that, at least at the point in the podcast I've gotten to.
Yeah, it seems like there's going to have to be a lot of iterations where they work out a lot of these kinks where they, if it's safe for the general population, then you would imagine they'd eventually do some sort of tests on animals or whatever, maybe to find out if there's a head injuries.
Testing on animals, but
that's what I mean. But like have an animal that has it, but then cause a sort of head injury that might mimic and see what happens there.
Yeah.
And then maybe try to prevent that from happening in the human. But I
Yeah.
do know that they if there's pressure buildup in the skull, they'll drill it out. So maybe there's some sort of like one-way valve technology they can integrate into it. So there's like pressure can be relieved if the pressure builds up, but nothing can come in.
Well, because the chip itself, the implant, like it sits to fill in that hole in the skull, right? Like it's not just
It's
an empty
sealing
hole,
it back, yeah.
But you imagine like you're playing a sport, you fall, you hit your head. Like if you hit your head on the side that the implant is on,
Will it pop out?
will like the brain hit against that? Well, the implant is screwed in, so it won't pop out.
Oh,
but
I
I
see what you
wonder, like,
If the
would the brain be
movement
susceptible to damage by
hitting
like,
the
bumping
fibers
against the chip, right? Anyway,
Definitely
super
something to think for them
fascinating.
to
I'll
think
leave a
about.
link to it. That episode is crazy. Super
Very
long. It's a
long.
big commitment. So it's kind of like approach it like an audiobook. But
Yeah, basically. All right.
So here's the next video Drew saved here. This is a guy using, is that just a laser pointer?
I think so.
And he's bouncing bubbles off of it.
Yeah, he's bouncing bubbles off of a laser pointer, and he's shocked. And then when I saw it, I was like, I've never heard of this. Like, if
We need to try
test
this.
that.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a laser pointer. And
I've got one
bubbles
like
right
this,
now.
one of the big high power ones.
I've got a regular one, like a cat one, here right now, and bubbles.
Oh. Well, we're gonna do some science on our break. And
On our break, we're gonna
see if
try
a
it.
low-powered cat laser can work with bubbles.
And if not, then we'll have to get one of these Dean's high power.
So
one
the
for next
description on
episode.
this video says bubbles can bounce on laser beams due to the optical tweezers effect, where focused laser light creates a gradient force that traps and manipulates small particles. The laser's intensity and the bubble's surface properties allow for this interaction, demonstrating light's ability to exert mechanical forces on tiny objects. Want more interesting content like this? Follow Gravitonomy. Wow. That's so cool. I've never... This
So
is great.
it says that the intensity of the bubbles, or the laser's intensity, has the effect. So you might actually need the high power laser.
Yeah. Yeah, I've
Well,
got the
either
one
way,
that you
we're
can
gonna
point
try
in
it.
the sky and just like it goes
Yeah.
for days,
Yeah.
which you're not supposed to point in the sky, but I love it. It's fun.
Pointing at a UFO.
All right, so here's the next one. There are 4 back-to-back
yeah.
supermoons coming up. So this one has audio. Well, let's let this play here for you guys.
Some thrilling space news you won't want to miss. 4 back-to-back supermoons are on the way, and it will be a fascinating sight. A supermoon occurs when a full moon aligns with the moon's closest approach to Earth in its orbit, making it appear larger and brighter than usual. This can make the moon look up to 14% bigger and 30% brighter in the sky, creating a stunning spectacle for stargazers and photographers. According to GMT, the first supermoon of the year will rise on August 19th. This will be a super blue moon, as it will be the 3rd full moon of 4 in a season, known as a blue moon. Next up is the super harvest moon on September 18th, which will be extra special, with a partial lunar eclipse visible from the Americas, Antarctica, Africa, Europe, Western Asia, and southwestern Russia. Following that, on October 17th, we'll witness the Super Hunter's Moon, the closest full supermoon of 2024. Finally, the year will wrap up with the Super Beaver Moon on November 15th. Don't miss these incredible events as the night sky puts on a spectacular show. Share this video.
So,
Yeah, I got some cool things to look forward to in the sky.
heck yeah. I need to put the full moons on my calendar. That'll be cool.
I know.
So check this out. This is my favorite comment. Super Beaver Moon needs some explaining.
Yeah.
People are funny. All right. And then we got another one here.
I like this one. I think you'd get kicked out of this one.
I imagine this has audio. Visualizing crop circles in three
It might just be
dimensions.
music.
Yeah.
But it's pretty cool to see.
Huh. I know where they got the idea to do this.
From me.
Contact.
Oh, yeah.
Whoa. Huh.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I have yet
See
to
the
spend
life.
significant. Ooh, yes. I've yet to spend significant time like diving into the depths of crop circles. But
Dude, there's some pretty compelling videos
yeah.
out about like seeing the actual formation of crop circles, like where you see like these little white orbs flying around. Like sometimes you see these UAPs, UFOs flying around in the city,
area
and
where
then
crop circles.
there
about
was
to
a
show up.
video showing, and it was an older video, like in the 90s. Like I don't know if this technology even to edit that was around then, but you see this little orb flying around and somebody videotaping it, and as it passes over a field, a crop circle appears.
I'm gonna need you to find that and show that to me.
Yeah,
Not
I'll
this
show it to
moment,
you.
but yeah.
We'll have to do an episode on crop circles because there's some fascinating stuff. And there's some fascinating, like there was a whole research group in England looking at these, and the FBI, like they got the FBI involved, and they were doing a whole operation where they were gonna like stake out a field
Yeah.
and just wait for a crop circle to happen. But
So-
the FBI faked it,
Oh.
faked one while the researchers were like sleeping or something in the middle of the night. And when they woke up, they like made a whole mockery of it, and they supposedly, I don't know if it was the FBI. It might have been a different
Agency.
but this was in the U.S. and the investigator was like, "Oh, look at this," and then it was obvious when they actually went to the field that it was a fake because of the evidence that has been talked about.
So they didn't actually fool the researchers?
No, the researchers knew it was fake, but the interviewers and the cameras came before the researchers actually went and saw the field for themselves. So in the interview, they were like, yeah, this is amazing. We have all this proof now, and this is going to be like a once in a lifetime thing. And supposedly the field had been guarded by this agency that they had contracted to come and secure the site so they could prove that it wasn't a hoax.
Yeah.
And they basically found all evidence to show that it was a hoax. But the FBI or whatever agency it was supposedly on lookout during this time. And they were like, what the hell? Like, this is 100% fake, but you guys are supposed to be watching it. So basically they faked it, and then they just smeared the name of the researchers. So then it was like the research was stalled after that. Nobody wanted to fund it. Nobody wanted to like have anything to do with it because everybody was like, oh, it's obviously fake. It was like national
obviously
news
there
and
are
stuff.
like it's only common sense that there's hoaxes, but it's in the same thing with like UFOs. Like obviously some of them are hoaxes. Obviously some of them are people just making up stories who want attention. Obviously some of them maybe from some people having mental health issues, but you only need one,
Right. Yeah. You really only need one that you can't explain from. So actually, I believe it was a Y-Files episode. So maybe you could watch that. But there was a lot of the evidence that was like pretty compelling as far as obviously the fake ones are fake, and they can confirm that they're fake basically by the evidence that they're seeing. Like with the corn stalks in a lot of the cases.
Yes.
That's
the one big detail I recall from when I did look into it a little, which is that the fake ones, like the main way, like I remember it was some old TV show back in the day, like where like people were faking them.
They were showing
how you make them by like using strings and a board to like step. But those show like
obvious
damage and breakage to the stocks,
and
that
they'll
you don't
never come
see,
back up and be okay.
Right, that you don't see when
it's a supposed real one. The stalks are bent over gently, and there's woven. Nodules. They're woven in some cases, but also there's these radiation nodules that show up on the stalks where the bending happens.
Interesting, yeah.
That are not in the ones that are faked. The ones that are faked are like when you zoom out and you look from an airplane, it looks pretty good. But as soon as you get on the ground, it's all messy. They're all flown down in, random patterns. But then the ones that are real, quote unquote, are like perfectly woven in patterns where it's like precise and they're just bent over instead of like being broken and damaged.
Right.
And when they pop back up, and they're fully erect again, and the field is back to normal, they have a distinct pattern as the same as the pattern of them being. You could basically see the shadow of the crop circle in the coloration of the stalks that were bent over.
You're saying the natural or the quote unquote real
unnatural ones.
The quote unquote like real crop circles that actually come back up.
Yeah,
I haven't heard that.
Yeah, so maybe not the ones themselves, but they'll replant the field.
Oh, right.
And the signatures from the same stalks that are being regrown, same areas, it shows the like a signature of the. There's still an obvious.
There's some sort of detectable anomaly.
You could basically see the crop circle still. Even though it's a whole new crop.
It affects like the growth or whatever, maybe.
Yeah. Like the whatever, the coloration is different. So it's off a slight amount from the other ones near it. Yeah. So when you look at it from zoomed out, it looks like the crop circle still, but they're all standing up. Perfectly normal. Anyway, we'll have to do a whole topic where I can get all my information right in front of me and stuff. But
we got to do a deep dive on crop circles at some point.
That would be a fun episode.
My main issue is I don't know like where to go for like trustworthy information on it, but
we'll figure it out.
I don't know who's like the Graham Hancock of.
So the researcher I was talking about
or the Randall Carlson.
He was like the person that was like the main researcher on the topic, but then he was basically ostracized after that event where they faked it on national television and they made them look like fools.
Well, anyone who's doing it like on television, I'm a little skeptical of anyway, because there's so much pressure for like performance and stuff, and like I could see it just being faked just for television anyway, like.
Well, and that's kind of the point. Is the researcher?
It's like ghost hunters who like actually have ghost hunter TV shows. Like I am going to be less likely to believe someone like that because they're like going for that sort of TV fame attention versus someone who does it, documents it, writes books, and publishes like lectures and like someone who's like
more
going about it more in a thorough and sober tone rather than trying to be entertaining and get everyone to stick around after the next commercial break. Like that. It's like the difference between like reading Graham Hancock books and watching the Ancient Aliens TV show, like not that there isn't cool stuff or not that they maybe aren't right sometimes. I can't deal with the weird sensationalism that comes with the TV 100% coverage
agree
of
with
stuff.
That. I in this case on this topic, that researcher that I'm talking about, the whole idea of going on TV was having the proof,
right?
Like having getting everybody involved, getting the agency to come and protect the land around it, and like all of that is a way to get people introduced and interested in the topic.
What I'm struggling with is like Are you saying that they were essentially had some sort of way to predict where a crop circle would happen? Because how else would they be sitting in a field waiting for a crop circle to happen? It's not like they just happen when you want them to.
No, but the particular field and the area was like a hot spot for it.
Gotcha.
There was multiple in the area, and they picked a field that hadn't happened to it yet, and it was more of like a sit and wait and hope. Mm-hmm. They didn't actually have any idea whether it would happen during the time frame where they had all this set up. Yeah. This is what the researchers tell me after the fact. It could also be that they were doing this sensationally and with the understanding that they wouldn't be smeared, but the researcher seemed pretty sincere in what he was talking about, and all of the news coverage before that, there was a lot, and especially in this area, there was a lot of this happening. People wanted answers. People wanted to know what was going on.
Well, there's like two sides to the like TV sensationalism that like both give me the bad taste in my mouth, right? There's like the version I just described where it's like, oh, you know, make it all bombastic, exaggerate, blah, 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 you know. But then there's the other version, which is the like the version that you see in the Chris Bledsoe story where like there's someone or some phenomenon that people are starting to take really seriously. Yep. And so then TV networks get involved to produce something. They lure the person in and
under false
essentially pretenses, with the intention to like discredit them.
Yeah. Which sounds like what happened here.
Yeah.
It sounds like he was lured into this.
Either way, I'm less interested in the TV show. If it's the second type, then I'd be more interested in following the person. So, right? But
actually, this wasn't like a TV show. It wasn't like a fully produced thing. It was this researcher
was just going for
by
video.
The media, getting interest from the media because of the experiment,
the size
they were doing,
and scale of the experiment they're doing.
So they were getting this whatever agency it was to guard this land to make sure that nobody could get in to like fake it. And
then the very guards that are protecting it are the ones
exactly. And they never say they did, but they're the ones who are supposedly guarding it. And also the people who, so there was actually two gentlemen who took credit for a ton of the English, like European crop circles that were going on at the time. And this was probably in the late 70s, 80s, something like that. And they took credit for it. And they were both like in their late 50s and 60s, maybe even like late 60s. But at the time when they like said, hey, this is what we've been doing for the last 20 years. And in some of the cases, there's no trail showing somebody coming into the field.
Right.
And what they said they were doing. And the ones they were talking about, like the specific fields they were talking about, crop circles they were talking about having done this to, because of the investigators saying, hey, it doesn't make sense that you did these. There's no trail showing or no evidence showing that somebody walked through this field and then did this. And in some cases, there's like tractor tire tracks that go through fields, and some of the crop circles overlap with those. Yeah. So you can make sense somebody walked in using
on
those
an
tracks.
Already established track.
Right. But this one had none near it.
Right.
And basically the person that said he faked it, or he was the one who did it, said that him and his buddy would pole vault into the fields using giant poles to like stilt walk through the fields so that there was undetectable. And we're talking about, at the time they were 60-something years old giving this interview and saying 20 years ago. She's talking about two 40-year-old men pole vaulting on stilts. Stilt walking through fields.
Which is funny because that would leave its own trail.
Right, you would be able to see that too.
It wouldn't deform the plants. You'd have to notice it on the actual ground.
Right, you'd have to do way more intensive investigation to find those tracks.
Right.
But I just thought that was ludicrous. And the media was like, "Oh, that makes sense." You know, it's just like, come on, like.
All right, so we're over. So let's take our first break. But I want to put out a call to the listeners. If you know like who we should read or look into to
Let us
like
know.
dive deep into crop circles, like send us some links. Or give us some suggestions, host at dualitycheck.net or a comment on YouTube. It would be super helpful because
Or DM.
I would love to, or DM on social media. And I would love to dive into the topic. I find it fascinating. It's one of those things that I know is interwoven with hoaxes. And so like, it's just going to be such a process to like dig
Sift through
into
it
it. And right. Separate the wheat from the chaff,
Right.
so to speak. No pun
As it were.
intended.
I don't even know that.
All right, so
right,
we're
we'll be
taking a
back.
break here. This is another song from TJ McNulty. This is called Colors. Enjoy.
Well, I've been given too much time to waste, and I have stolen too many times for me to change my ways. I have wasted too much time. I feel the difference, but never on the inside. I see your colors coming. Well, your rays are trying to hunt me down. I've rinsed the rest of my body. Your colors don't stain me now. Well, I'm a spectator of things passing by. Like they say, I live my life all in good time. I've been a giver. Oh, what a waste. Like an old lover, I've been living my days all in bad taste. Well, I see your colors coming. Well, your rays are trying to hunt me down. I've rinsed the rest of my body. Your colors don't stain. Your colors don't stain me now.
God damn.
Welcome back.
Wow.
Way to go, TJ.
Well done. All right, we're back.
Sweet. Also, I've been putting in the show notes for anytime we have an artist song like this, I've been putting links to their album.
Yeah,
So,
I saw that, and I kept it in the YouTube.
If y'all are
Description.
feeling this music, go ahead and, add it to your Spotify, add it to your Apple Music. Support these local artists.
Yeah.
They're all small time. So any bit of support and listening is great for them. So do
Absolutely.
it. So tell me about this McDonald's ice cream theory. I need to hear this.
So there was, have you seen the memes about how there's like the ice cream machine at McDonald's is always broken?
Yeah, I have.
So, and I've experienced this too. You go to a McDonald's, the ice cream, like the one time that you decide you want a McDonald's ice cream or a McFlurry.
Yeah.
And it's broken. You can't get one.
I have experienced that.
And
even though I try to stay away from fast food as much these days, but
so it became such a common knowledge that it became a meme. People are memeing it, you know, and they're just out there just making fun of the fact that you'll never be able to, you know, anytime you actually want to go get McFlurry, it's always broken. So there was a report showing that at least 15% of worldwide McDonald's ice cream machines were always down at one time, at any given time. 15%. And
that's
McDonald's are everywhere.
Yeah.
Like in one city, you might have 20, right?
Right.
Or more.
Right.
Depending on
the size of your city.
Geographic, you know, stuff. But so it got to a point in like, this has been prolonged for a long time, as long as the McFlurries and ice cream has been served at McDonald's, which I don't know, maybe it goes all the way back to the beginning. So there's one company that is contracted and makes the ice cream machine that McDonald's uses for every single franchise. So franchise owners, when they start a McDonald's, they're forced to buy this ice cream machine.
The entire McDonald's system is a well-oiled machine. Right. You're buying a franchise, you're buying into their system, which means buying all the stuff.
All the product.
You're going to use their point of sale. You're going to use all the different kitchen equipment. It's the same across the board
for the most part.
Right.
So franchise owners were forced to buy this. Taylor is the brand name of these ice cream machines.
Are they the only ones allowed to service it, I imagine?
Yep. They're the only ones allowed to service it, and they're the only ones. And that means, so the report came out when the investigations came about that Taylor should have been making about $70 million a year on maintenance of these machines based on their projections. That they, say this is how often we assume we'll be needing to.
There's going to be a certain percentage of failure rates. Yeah.
But what they were actually making was over double that. $170 million was being made by their maintenance and service department for their company at the time. And so the investigators were like, why is it so high? It's way higher than your projections, and it's been like this for years.
All right, before you fill this in, I want to guess now.
Okay.
So, I think Taylor is fine with that, obviously. Especially if everything's sold with contracts that allows them to bill for all these service calls. And rather than McDonald's corporate forcing them to fix it because it's such a rampant problem, maybe the amount of lost sales of ice cream is less than the amount of money they can make by splitting the difference of like sharing the service money with Taylor, because it's actually the franchisees who have to pay the service fees, not McDonald's corporate. And so they make a deal with Taylor to where they get a piece of the service money, which more than makes up for the loss of ice cream sales, because corporate only gets a percentage of that anyway.
Yes, basically, in a sense. So Taylor is contracted from McDonald's, and in the investigation, they found that. So there was a company that came along, and I'll preference all of basically what you said by there's a company that came along called Kitsch.
Okay.
They're a startup, a 3-man startup, tech startup, and they came up with a product that, when plugged into the McDonald's ice cream machines,
prevents them from breaking down.
Prevents them or fixes them, and then also prevents them from further being like having the problem that was rampant in all of the machines.
Okay.
And after this, a lot of the franchises were buying this product because it was fixing their machines, and they were able to use their machines without having to go through. And they were doing it on the down low, in a sense.
Right.
Like,
the franchisee got approached by this company.
Yep.
They're like, oh heck
hey,
yeah.
we got a fix for you.
You got a fix? I'll buy that.
Yep.
I don't need corporate's approval. Like, I need to get this fixed.
Yep. Right? Yeah. They want it fixed. We want it fixed. Everybody's going to make more money if we get it fixed, right? That's the franchisee's
point of
motive,
view. Right.
You know? And so, yeah, this Kitsch company comes along and is selling these like crazy because, but they know that they're up against potential corporate espionage because of what, like, they know that what they're selling and what they're doing is undermining, but they also like assumed and that this was because of how long standing this problem was,
right,
and how likely it is that this was happening on purpose.
They were probably assuming malicious intent on Taylor's part, not on McDonald's corporate part.
Basically, because of the problems that they were seeing within the machines, and the fact that they were able to fix it by using software and not having to do any kind of hardware upgrades or modifications.
Interesting.
They knew that it was a software problem, and it was basically built into the code to fail at a certain point. And that means that every time they do a repair, they basically replace this probably $2 part, or update the software and say, oh, you're good now. And then it works for another 2 years, and then it craps out again. And then they have to pay again to have Taylor come and repair it. So they found that this is like a recurring thing, and they were able to prevent it from happening because it was basically just a software glitch that was happening. And their product sold like crazy. And then there was... so the parent company of Taylor is Maccabees, or what was it? Let me see here. Can't remember the name. Where are you? Middleby was the parent company of Taylor, and they basically went on a corporate espionage campaign to try to buy or get access to the software so they can reverse engineer it and then sell their own product to the franchisees and fix all of the problems, right?
Middleby did?
Middleby. So another company, another subsidiary of Middleby was, I can't remember the name of the subsidiary, but it was like a tech company that was associated with Middleby, who's also associated with Taylor.
Right.
Who came out with this product that was going to fix and is more secure than this Kitsch product. So they eventually, after 3 tries, Kitsch stopped them from getting their software 3 different times, where they tried to inquire using fake names and like all these different tactics to try to like gain like access to it. On the 3rd time, they actually got a McDonald's franchisee. So somebody that Kitsch is targeting as their customer, the franchisee, they actually got one of the franchisees to be compliant with what they're trying to do. So eventually Kitsch sold the franchisee their product, and then they reverse engineered it and came up with like a crappier, quick version of it like months later. So the secondary subsidiary of Middleby started selling this to all of the franchisees and marketing it as a secure, Taylor approved product that they could plug in and it'll help solve their issues. And then they started like campaigning and like saying and like sending emails to all the franchisees saying, if you are using a Kitsch product, it is against our warranty, and we'll stop providing any service to your machines, and you'll have to purchase a new one or whatever, and all this stuff. Saying if you continue to use Kitsch products, you have to buy this instead. This is secure. This is validated or verified by our company and all that.
Right.
And so they were like basically finding a new way to extort the franchisees.
Yeah, probably not as cheap as the Kitsch product.
Right. It's probably like a OEM product where it's like top of the line, like, you know, factory specs and all this, basically what they're saying. And they basically were finding a new way to extract money from these franchisees, you know, who are just trying to freaking make a living and sell freaking ice cream.
They just want to push
kids,
some freaking McFlurries in some people's bellies.
Damn. And so there is a court document now.
Plus, if your ice cream machine's broken, that means all your ice cream mix and all your candy that you got to mix in your McFlurries is just sitting there getting old. It's a waste.
Exactly.
No one wants some stale Butterfingers in their McFlurry.
So yeah, eventually there was Kitsch sued Taylor or Middleby or whoever it was, because of the fact that they were like actively campaigning to monopolize this thing or whatever, and they stole their product, and they're, you know, basically like a trademark, or what is it? Patent feud. Okay.
So how did this come out? So was there a lawsuit then, I assume?
Yes, so there was a lawsuit, and actually Kitsch is going, I think it's actually, so it was 3 years ago that Kitsch filed the lawsuit. Let me see. Oh, so there was another wrinkle. The owner of Middleby's, in the discovery process during the litigation, there was emails that were like silently, you know, given access to the litigators, the lawyers. Yeah. And they found that these emails were like basically like straight up, you know, talking about them trying to, or basically, so Taylor basically had to admit that it was a faulty product that they knew was faulty when they were selling it.
And it was designed that way.
It was designed that way because it was going to give them more revenue, because that was basically their whole business model, was selling these ice cream machines to McDonald's and then servicing them. And that was part of their agreement. So McDonald's was complicit in the fact that they knew that Taylor. So these emails between Middleby and McDonald's, the CEO corporate, was basically admitting, like, there's another way we can get rid of this other product. And like they were like conspiring to get rid of Kitsch as being, because I think initially, and if I remember correctly, initially before Kitsch came out, there was nothing saying that they couldn't use something to repair the device itself. Right. I don't think that was in the writing beforehand, but then it was quickly put into the writing.
Like, you have to think about it, like at some point, depending on like the device, like franchisees have to be able to repair their own equipment, right? Like if the door handle to the men's room is busted.
You don't have to call McDonald's corporate to
get the OEM fixed. Construction company, like just freaking, I can replace it myself. It's ridiculous, you know, like. And obviously, as things get more and more complicated with the type of equipment and the expense of the equipment, and then there's also
of the equipment, if there is something speciality, like.
Right. Then obviously, as things get more expensive, you'll be more and more likely to be in some sort of service contract. But that's crazy.
Yeah, so I believe they probably were. And they were so desperate because I think the fact of having 15% of McDonald's needing repairs, that's a lot of repairs for a company to
Well, 15% of ice cream machines at any given point, right? So that's
that's what I mean. It's like that.
Yeah.
Taylor was having to service,
which, like,
15%
over the
of their
years,
customers
probably
at all times.
a larger percentage than 15% of franchise owners had to deal with it. It's just at any given moment, there's 15% down. Right. Yeah. But if I've been a franchise owner for 20 years,
you're never getting
the likelihood that I've had to deal with it at some point in those 20 years is
higher.
15% of that 20 years.
Yeah.
So, like, it's likely that most of these franchise owners are dealing with this. That's. But
I also mean, like, Taylor themselves, and if they're as shady as they're seeming in this whole situation, they were probably had low staff.
Yeah.
They weren't able to meet the demand of the repairs. They weren't expanding to meet the demands of the repairs.
There's freaking McDonald's everywhere. And if Taylor doesn't have service techs in all the rural areas, all the like little nooks and crannies that you can find a McDonald's at, on some highway exit in the middle of freaking Utah desert, like, of course, there's not going to be a Taylor service tech anywhere nearby. So, like,
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's going to take weeks or months for it to get fixed.
So you're going to be a lot more desperate as the franchise owner, like when they're like, okay, well, we'll get someone out there
in the next 6 to 9 months,
right? Like, they're going to go start looking for other solutions.
Yep. Especially when they're losing money. Like,
so then it came out that corporate was involved.
Ice cream.
That's crazy.
So there's a lawsuit against McDonald's, and I believe
it's like a class action of the franchisees against corporate.
I don't know if it's. I think it's Kitsch right now. I don't think that the other ones have caught on. Eventually, if
Kitsch is suing based on the intellectual property of the fix that they developed.
In the discovery, they found this evidence linking McDonald's, so I think that's going to be a further litigation where the franchisees might go after McDonald's themselves.
If I was a franchisee, I would not be having that. Yeah, it's like it is planned obsolescence, but like it's an even more devious version of it, because you have someone who is supposed to be your partner on it, setting you up for that failure to get extra money out of you.
Yep,
that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean it's almost foolproof, because then you put together this like company culture of like, we're here to help you. We're always there for you, and things might be slow, and we'll get it back. And then the franchisees are just like, eventually they're gonna come through.
Right.
That's really all it takes.
Yeah.
Especially when you're a franchisee and you may go to like one McDonald's conference a year where they just do hoorah, McDonald's is awesome. Yeah,
they're probably writing nasty letters to corporate, being like, when are we gonna get a new model of ice cream machine?
Yeah, I guess mine's been broken for 8 months. Like, I haven't had ice cream for 8 months. People have been asking. I had to take it off my menu.
Yeah.
So I thought this was funny. According to the website McBroken, which tracks ice cream machines downtime at McDonald's restaurants across the U.S., between 13% and 17% of McDonald's restaurants have had a broken ice cream machine at any given time in just this month.
How many percent? Sorry, I was too busy laughing.
13 to 17% of McDonald's restaurants have had a broken ice cream machines at any given time just this month. That percentage has recently been as high as 35% in New York City and 28% in Washington, D.C.
Check this out. McBroken.com. I'll link this in the podcast notes, because I know all of you want to know. And it's actually got a map showing which McDonald's that have red dots because their ice cream machine's down.
Oh, that's great.
This one past Davis.
That's Dixon.
Yep. Don't go to the Dixon McDonald's if you want ice cream.
So
is this one near us? We don't
want to dox ourselves.
Wow. We used to live right near this one.
That's true. We did. That one is the one I have that memory of it always being broken.
Really?
Yeah.
No,
that's the one, and it's broken right now.
Oh my God.
Oh, that's so good. So there's about 3 or 4 There's one that said
Look,
inconclusive.
he just keeps. Oh my god!
Yeah, it said the highest percentages is in New York City. You go zoom in.
Yeah,
on
New York
City.
is 32%.
Yeah, that's what. And so it says the high has been 35%, and in Washington D.C. it's 28%. Damn.
Yeah, currently New York leads with 32%. San Antonio is in second place with 20.51%.
San Francisco in a close third at 20%. That makes sense.
How does this website work?
I love this. So yeah, that was basically the conspiracy theory. So there was a conspiracy theory floating around the internet for a long time about this because of this meme. Everybody's talking about how it's always broken and stuff. But now it's been confirmed. There's litigation. There's actual evidence coming out showing that McDonald's and Taylor are culprits in a whole ploy to steal money from these franchisees, basically, and attuned to $170 million a year.
Check this out. So I clicked on the how does this website work, and it took me to this guy's X profile. He said, I reverse engineered McDonald's internal API, and I'm currently placing an order worth $18,752 every minute at every McDonald's in the US to figure out which locations have broken ice cream machine.
That's amazing. So
I'm
at
sorry.
every McDonald's, he's placing an order for an ice cream cone to see if they're broken.
Yeah.
If their ice cream machine is broken. That's great.
That is commitment. I'm sorry, McDonald's data analyst. I'm afraid I'm ruining your entire mobile conversion metrics for my own personal amusement.
That is awesome.
Wow. What a fun conspiracy.
Yep. Confirmed. Yeah.
Well, cool. That took up a segment.
Yeah, let's take a break and we'll come back and we'll do Dean's talk on
Dan Warren.
Dan Warren. Yeah.
Yeah, this is about UFOs.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, we'll be back.
Sick.
Welcome back.
Hello.
That last segment inspired Drew and I to like go off on all these maintenance and install stories.
Yeah.
We had a little longer break there.
Hey, it's true. I mean, it could definitely see maintenance companies taking advantage of their customers.
Right.
You can see how it happens.
Yeah. I mean, if they're ethical, like we have a supplier who supplies these computer systems that we install, and there was some sort of like big mess up they did where like certain of them, like after like a power outage, would come back on and you would press the power button and they just give a quick little white flash and the motherboard was just dead. And like obviously very expensive fix because you got to replace the entire board, which on these like modern flat screens is like the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean that is the brain of the
luckily thing. They were like, oh no, this is on us, and we were able to like
good.
Yeah, get them to fix them. But
that's good. But you can see where
but not every company would be that honest.
Yeah, you can say, hell, that's weird. We'll have to send somebody out. It takes 2 weeks, and all that.
It was a big nationwide controversy, though. Like they were failing everywhere.
Oh shoot,
big problem. All right, let's get into some Dan Warren.
Cool.
All right, so by the way, what the heck? There's 2 speakers now using Back to the Future graphics for their...
I know. They definitely didn't coordinate. Or maybe they did. I don't know.
Maybe, but...
Maybe they did.
Yeah, so he introduces himself saying he's got 2 engineering degrees. He also says, like, he tries to portray himself as, like, just someone who's very interested in these topics and who isn't necessarily like some like world foremost expert, but his role that he sees, for himself is to like nerd out on all this stuff and then like package it and publish it to, the internet in more digestible ways.
Yeah.
So I'll link to all of his social stuff here. So that you guys can check him out.
Yeah, get a feel for him.
Yeah. He talks about how like he's kind of one side of him got super into all the like ancient history stuff, like Graham Hancock nerd and whatnot.
Yeah.
Talks about basically he's just kind of going over his background and the types of topics he was into.
Yeah, he was, if I remember, because I did listen to a little bit. I hadn't seen any of his images or anything, but I listened to a little bit of it. And he was super, like most of the people who are interested in these kind of topics, there were a lot of them, especially like our generation or maybe a couple generations before us, were like, a lot of them were inspired by Graham Hancock's work in the 90s and, up currently. And, so he was interested in Göbekli Tepe and stuff too, like the whole ancient mystery stuff and the timeline there. And if I remember correctly, he tries in a way to kind of connect the two, right?
Yeah. I forget because he gives this whole ancient history background, but I forget how he said he got into the UFO topic or if it was just something he's always been interested in. But I think he... at some point he starts to realize that these things may be linked.
Yeah, he starts to kind of put together, I think maybe in like most of us may have done too, like where you link the fact that there are conspiracies and that the conspiracies can lead you to maybe a certain place in the government or a certain, institution that might give you pause and like their credibility. Like I don't know how he links them specifically, but I think that's kind of where his mind was, at least if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Then he starts talking about some of the big UFO whistleblowers like Lue Elizondo and Christopher Mellon, and he talks about this idea that I think the 2 of them, I'm not sure which one he's crediting this to, are putting forward, which he calls the 5 pillars of emphasis. I think this is a Lue Elizondo thing.
I think Chris Mellon is more the legislative stuff because he's a politician. And stuff.
Right. So he says the first pillar of emphasis is legislative engagement. The second pillar being senior executive level engagement. Third, international engagement. The fourth, mainstream media engagement. And then 5 is engaging the masses. So
Yeah, I think Lue is
I think what they're saying is like these are all different areas that need to be worked on.
Yeah, I think that's what they're trying to put out to people is like this is what their intentions are, these pillars of emphasis, like the things they're trying to emphasize.
These are their goals in becoming UFO,
literate in society.
Well, becoming UFO whistleblowers, like they're trying to essentially move the topic in these 5 ways, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're all doing different things for the same cause, right? Mm-hmm. Legislative engagement is all the bureaucracies and engaging that, and then you got senior level, which is more like corporation. You would assume like there's senior level executive engagement.
No, not like corporations. Like senior executives in the government, I believe is what he's saying.
Yeah.
So
and then international,
like trying to get actual bigwig like internal government people engaged in the topic.
And then international engagement and mainstream media engagement, and then engaging the masses. I think those are all kind of
these are all like the 5 pillars
media.
of like how to approach and accomplish disclosure.
Yeah. At least for themselves.
You kind of need all these things to line up in order for disclosure to really, truly be successful, I think is the idea here.
Yeah. Engagement being the key.
Mm-hmm. And he starts talking about, he posits the question, are we alone in the universe? And he talks about the Drake equation here. I forget what points he makes about the Drake equation, though. Should have taken notes, not just screenshots. But this is a really cool illustration of the Drake equation, I think.
Yeah.
So let's analyze the Drake equation a bit. So we got n equals, I don't know, I'm not going to be able to say all these subscripts, but so the number of technologically advanced civilizations in the Milky Way galaxy equals the first factor being the rate of formation of stars in the galaxy. So you first need to know how many stars are in galaxies. Then you need to know the fraction of those stars with planetary systems.
All right.
Then you multiply that by the number of planets per solar system with an environment suitable for life.
Which is changing.
Right. So is the number of planets around stars.
Yeah.
Now back when Drake wrote the Drake equation, we didn't, like, most of these things weren't known.
Yeah.
The fraction of suitable planets on which life actually appears.
Which there's only one so far that we know of.
Right. We, at least publicly, only
acknowledge
know of
one
life here on Earth. So if you're going to try and solve the Drake equation, you have to guess this factor.
Right.
You have to multiply all this by the fraction of life-bearing planets on which intelligent life emerges.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, sure.
We're talking about, because remember, the Drake equation is Drake's answer to, like, where are they? Right?
Yeah.
This is him trying to be like, why aren't we being visited
More often.
How likely is it that there are
intelligent enough life to visit?
Right.
That's right. Okay, so that makes sense then in that context.
Mm-hmm. The fraction, you have to multiply this by the fraction of civilizations that develop a technology that releases detectable signs of their existence into space.
Yeah.
And this is a big one for me, because who's to say that as you get more and more advanced, and we're already running into this right now, is we're not, as we become more and more advanced, we're not pushing higher and higher and higher and higher power radio waves out into space. We're getting more and more and more and
inclusive,
more efficient with which radio waves we use, and we're maximizing the amount of power you need in order to send a signal. So we're not just like dumping these masses of radio waves as we were at some certain points in the past.
Well, and also thinking about like if you were to accelerate or to jump to a time 1,000 years from now when technology has progressed 1,000 years and you know we don't get hit by a comet, we are already moving in the direction of having the least amount of footprint or
lower and lower electromagnetic output.
Yeah,
right.
We're trying to, in a sense, like trying eventually, like obviously it's not being like fully, pushed as far as what we are capable of doing in that realm, but we're trying to go green in a sense of like only like using the Earth's energy and the solar systems, the sun and all these things to like generate enough energy to not have to like burn off or whatever, or
right. But as we develop, our energy needs are actually going up.
Yeah.
But not eventually we get to a point where if we have a Dyson electromagnetic radiation we're putting out.
If we have a Dyson sphere eventually at some point in the next 1,000, 2,000 years that's capturing the energy from the sun and transmitting it, that'll be detectable because they're even seeing what they think could be Dyson spheres in other solar systems.
Right. And then the last term is you have to multiply by the length of time that such civilizations release detectable signals into space.
Okay.
Because if they end up going extinct, or if they end up just evolving past, needing to put out that radiation, then that all of a sudden they become radio silent to us. So all of these things, you multiply them together, and with the numbers we know, like there should be tons of life, but not all of it is. Not all of these terms do we know the answer to, or even have like really even usable estimates. So the Drake equation is a pretty interesting mystery.
And maybe deserves some updating.
Yeah.
At least in some of the dynamics of it.
Yeah. How's the babies doing? They need a visit?
I think he does this summer once in a while. He'll probably go back to sleep.
We'll give him a sec. All right. So what's this slide? Carrier group in recent UFO encounters had new air defense tech like Nimitz in 2004. Oh, yeah. So what he's saying here is that essentially there was a point in time where we upgraded our radar systems in our Navy. And basically, as soon as we hit those upgrades, we started detecting these signatures, like the Tic Tacs, which goes to show that it was not likely. It was more likely that these things have been happening, and that all of a sudden the upgraded radar capability made it possible for us to detect them, rather than they just happened to visit right after we upgraded our radar. It's less likely that way.
Yes, that it's less likely that way. It's more likely that they have been here and that we're just now detecting them because of our upgraded radar. And they initially thought that it might be a bug with the new radar, but it was working perfectly. Like the investigators that were putting these two things.
Well, that's why they sent out the jets to investigate these blips, right? And that's when they found the Tic Tacs.
Right. Well, they had been seeing these things for a long time too, before they even actually sent anybody to intercept. So like it was almost like at one point some person who maybe didn't get the memo that we don't investigate these sent out a fighter squadron to go and check it out.
Right.
Or it just happened to be somewhere nearby where they were detecting it, and they were like, hey, let's go check this thing out.
Right.
And there was no, instructions not to. But, yeah, it's interesting that as soon as we upgraded, we started to see them, whichever way it pans out to be.
Yeah. And then he starts talking about, he talks about ARROW, which is the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. I believe that's the organization that Lue worked for in the government.
Okay. Before he became a quote-unquote whistleblower.
Right. I haven't heard of this guy, but now I'm going to have to look into him more, and this is actually pretty recent. But this U.S. Army colonel, here's a story, reveals the presence of alien life on Earth. They've been here for a long time. So here's a quote from Colonel Karl Nell from May 21st, 2024. Non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity. This interaction is not new. It's been ongoing, and there are unelected people in the government that are aware of that. There is zero doubt.
Wow.
It's a pretty powerful quote.
So let's take a quick break. Maybe look into him a little more while we're on a break, and I'll go take care of the little boy here.
And we
be right back.
Right back. Enjoy this song by Stevie Nader called Take You On.
I've been caught in a storm before. You turned and said to me I was out past the shore, sailing towards a dream, and I promised myself that I never sail one step off my coast. Among the things to say, among the things to say, among the things to say, among the things to say. Say I would take you on, I take you on, I take you on. Say I would take you on, take you on, I take you on. Once I was lost in the woods, you slowly start to say rain beat down where I stood, as I tried to find my way, and I swore to myself that I never said one step off my path. Among the things to say, among the things to say, among the things to say, among the things to say. Say I would take you on, I take you on, I take you on. Say I would take you on, take you on, I take you on. Say I would take you on, I take you on, I take you on. Say I would take you on, take you on, take you on. I have you know I was on the shore, and standing at the wooden exit door, 'cause it was you that I was waiting for. Yeah, that was me standing on the shore, and knocking at the wooden exit door, 'cause it was you that I was waiting for. For I I would take you on, I 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 take you on.
Sorry for the short segment there, but the upside of that is I was able to find the exact video that
you were referencing
was
there,
talking about here. So let's go ahead and just play a section of this
from Colonel Karl Nell.
Yep, this is at the SALT Eye Connections, New York, on the SALT YouTube channel. I'll leave a link.
Sure. Well, thanks, Alex. It's a pleasure and honor to be here, and it's a fantastic event, and I'm glad to see a large bunch of folks that stuck it out to the end for this talk. So I was fortunate. I had a 4-year ROTC scholarship to Penn. I graduated with a degree in electrical engineering. The Army sent me overseas to do signal corps engineering projects, so I did a lot of strategic comm projects in Europe. I ended up working in Army Space Command. I commanded a satellite ground station, war trace to the Joint Chiefs. I spent some time at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. The Army ultimately sent me to get a master's in mechanical engineering, a master's in strategic studies, graduate work in computer science. I was on track to stay in, but I decided that I wanted to pursue more of a technical career. So I got out and ended up working at Bell Labs, which was a fantastic place. Unfortunately, I was there during the trivestiture that folks may be familiar with, where the company got split up. I left Bell Labs and ended up working in Lockheed Missiles and Space. I worked at Northrop Grumman. I've ran strategic technology programs in the defense industry, worked for a lot of the 3-letter agencies, ultimately was a deputy chief of staff, or deputy CTO for a $2 billion company. I was a vice president general manager of a Northern Virginia-based R&D firm. I stayed in the military, in the reserve. I commanded at every grade level through brigade. I was fortunate to stand up the Army's newest expeditionary MI brigade. I was the deputy chief of staff for a combatant command. Ultimately, this experience sort of combined to give me the opportunity to come in and advise Army Futures Command, the largest reorganization in the Army Reserve since really 1973, on how the Army could be more effective. And my last assignment was involved with the UAP task force, which maybe is the most apropos for this discussion.
And so, Karl, here's the $1 million question. Do you believe that a higher form of non-human intelligence has visited this planet?
Right. So non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity. This interaction is not new, and it's been ongoing. And there are unelected people in the government that are aware of that.
And so, Karl, that is quite a bold statement. I'm wondering, and I'm curious, how confident are you that that is true?
There's zero doubt.
And Karl, what evidence have you seen? What was the moment where you developed this level of conviction? Because what you're saying is extremely consequential and very important. And I know that a lot of people here, even perhaps, may not believe that statement.
Right. Well, probably a better way to ask that is, how can the folks in the audience come to the, a common understanding of what this phenomenon is? And so there's sort of two tracks here. One is from first principles, and another is actually from the data. So let's take a look at the data. So we can look at some folks that have very high level access to information, like Paul Hellyer, who is the defense chief for Canada, has come out and said the same thing. We can look at Ham Eshed, the head of Israel's, or former head of Israel's Space Force, has said the same thing. Chris Mellon, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Intel, Sapco, has essentially said the same thing. Lue Elizondo has said the same thing. David Grush has said the same thing. David Grush cleared for presidentially level material. So you're looking at people that are in a position to know this, and they're telling you the same thing. You could take a look at the Gang of Eight in the Senate and in Congress. So there's two members of the Gang of Eight, Marco Rubio and Senator Chuck Schumer, that signed up to the UAP disclosure amendment last year that basically said they're not being told the truth and we need to push forward on that. So that's sort of an overview of some of the data. From a first principles standpoint, what's so unusual about this realization? There's billions of stars in the galaxy. Life here evolved in 500 million years, which is basically a blink of an eye. We've found planets around every star that we've looked at. It's likely that the universe is full of life. If you look at the SETI program in particular, the SETI program has all the same assumptions that you would accept and probably make with respect to this topic, except that they believe that non-human intelligence is transmitting signals here. But at the same time, like, we're not transmitting signals. SETI doesn't transmit signals, and the only signals that are actually broadcast of high enough power into space for somebody to pick up come from broadcast television and ballistic missile early warning systems, which you could argue our technology is moving away from. We're going to satellite, we're going to fiber. Broadcast TV is a thing of the past. And if you get to some state where society is stable, maybe we don't need ballistic missile early warning systems. So the other guy is probably not going to transmit. But what the other guy may do is come here if that's possible to do. And there's physics models that suggest that may be possible.
Wow.
So, boom, he said that quite confidently.
Yeah. Two things I want to know.
Yes.
He has an ear just like me.
Didn't notice. The other one?
Yeah. No, that one. Back it up and you can see. It's not exactly like mine, but you could tell one's poking out a little bit further than the other. Anyway,
uneven ears unite.
Mine actually has no cartilage. He's just a fake phony ear. Anyway.
What's the second thing?
He never opened his teeth.
Oh, yeah, he's like...
Those are just two physical things that I noticed while watching him. Nothing...
having to do with his
nothing
message.
Derogatory. It's just, I would want to let you know I'm on, we're ear, I'm with you, on the ear thing. But the teeth thing was creeping me out. He was always had his teeth cinched while he was talking.
Yeah.
He's talking through his teeth.
It's weird. So, a couple things for me is, he said there's two sides to how people can come to know this, right? The data. But what did he point out for data? Was just a bunch of government people and people connected into the intelligence community saying so. So
that's where I was going too, is like, it's hard to believe the fact that these are all governmental, but that's the only people who, other than like,
who else would be in a position to tell you this stuff?
Other than like a Bob Lazar.
Right.
But even then, like,
the thing is
the things that he's gone through, Bob Lazar has gone through, makes it hard to imagine somebody else wanting to go through that.
Right. Plus, this guy himself has been in and out of all, like, as he said, the three-letter agencies and Space Force and all of these things that will put him in a position to, like, know inside info, right?
Yeah.
And so what he said was that the UAP task force was the most apropos. But I think what the truth of the matter of what he's saying there is that maybe it's only the UAP task force info that he's at any liberty to talk about.
Right. He's not allowed to go any further. Just like Grush.
Just like Grush.
Anybody else that
and
is
so
whistleblowing.
I'm of two minds with this stuff, right? Like, because his second point was first principles thinking. And in first principles thinking, I completely agree with his points there. I like 100% agree with his points there. And we've been talking about all this stuff. So, of course, to me, and when you look at like Chandra Vikramasinghe's points of like panspermia, like, and you look at how many planets there are, and you look at like his mechanisms for life spreading across, of course there's going to be life everywhere. I also have a video, we'll probably cover some of it on the next episode, but it's another from Anton Petrov, and it's about some new evidence of life on Mars.
Okay.
So that'll be interesting to take a look at. But anyway, so on his first principles thinking side, I'm right with him. On his quote unquote data side, like for me, these people have sullied their reputation. They have abused the trust of the American people. And I just can't help but be skeptical of why now there seems to be this big group of people
uprising.
And, you know, I've heard people say, oh, well, what we're witnessing is like a slow process of disclosure.
Why does it have to be slow?
Well,
I mean,
if the topic gets as
can be
dark,
slow, but what I mean is, like, why are there not hundreds of whistleblowers now feeling safe enough to come out?
Because I think what all of these whistleblowers are doing is laying the groundwork to increase the confidence of the public, get the public and the politicians and the people who run society
caught up to speed.
To the point where like they are demanding more and more and more information. So like, you know,
you think they're trying to point our questions to the right, to get the right answers?
Yeah. So my problem with this is if disclosure means just admitting that non-human intelligence exists and that they come and go, and then they stop there, like, go to hell with your disclosure, because we arrived there without their disclosure.
Sure.
Right? Like, there's plenty of us who arrived there just from the first principles side and from, like, the leaks. Not like the disclosed leaks, but, like, the sloppy stuff that has been left, the breadcrumb trails.
Yeah, you're basically saying the evidence is strong enough to where we don't need your platitudes on, like, oh, this is what we... It's like, yeah, this is what we've been saying.
Right. Like, I'm bored. I don't need a bunch of government spooks telling me that alien life exists. I'm past that. I'm trying to figure out, like, why are they here? How are they interacting with us? In what ways are they interacting with unelected leaders?
Mm-hmm. And what's the role of these unelected leaders? Like, why are they given this total access? Why
is this all happening in dark?
Yeah.
You know, like, what are their intentions?
Or is it not happening in dark?
What might be more important is not what are the entities' intentions, but what are our leaders who are keeping this quiet, who are interacting with these beings? What are their intentions in keeping it secret and continuing to interact?
Right.
Because I don't trust those people as far as I can throw them.
Yeah, I mean, is it the fact that it's not happening on a large scale, or is it happening on a large scale and they've been effective enough to keep it from us?
Right. Like, has there been a slow technological transfer that is like boosting all of these 3-letter agencies and all of these military defense contractors? DARPA, like, is that like... Are we seeing essentially like a cold UFO war, like a new type of Cold War with UFO tech, where the reason it's all being held is because all of the countries are trying to milk as much of this technology as possible so they can dominate the earth? Because I don't know, I'm just so suspicious of, like, if all they're going to do is say they exist, I'm worried that the next thing that's going to happen is some freaking spectacle that looks like we're being invaded so that they can institute their damn one world government that they've been laying the groundwork for the last century or longer. But
yeah, I'm just curious what the timeline might look like, right? Like, they've been playing the long game thus far.
Right.
So is it that it's going to continue and that this might be 100, 200 years from the point of what you're describing?
Or are they just
or is it just now ramping up?
Yeah, like, are they getting to the point where maybe they've got enough development in this black budget projects? Maybe they're ready
to do what they're thinking.
Maybe they're ready to bust out UFOs if World War III starts, and like similar to the way when World War I happened, like it was the first technological war.
Yeah.
And people didn't know how to fight it. In fact, at the beginning, they were fighting it the way old wars were fought. They were lining up in lines and freaking shooting each other until someone realized this is really stupid. Let's dig some trenches.
Dig a trench, yeah.
You know?
Let's not just stand in front of the bullets.
Yeah, they freaking had cavalry.
Yeah.
in World War I still.
Right.
Like, yeah, what a big, easy target for someone with a freaking machine gun. Mm-hmm. So, like, in a similar way, is the reason this is all black is because this is the new Cold War. And when World War III breaks out, what's actually going to happen is the governments who are in contact, the governments who've been developing this technology, like, we're going to have a new war with freaking UFOs and with gravity weapons and time travel and, like...
Or in order to prevent the war, they announce that we've been contacted and they have this evidence and there's no need for these things anymore and it's time to come together and to, you know,
right,
without the war.
Or
yeah, do they
because
really need
they've been
the war
keeping
to
this
do that?
Technology so secret so that they have it and so that they can stage false flag UFO invasion that looks to the world like we're going to lose. We're under threat by technology. We have no ability to fight.
To defend this.
So we all better surrender to this alien force, which turns out to actually be like black budget intelligence companies. Anyway, I'm just so
unelected
skeptical.
Officials. Yeah.
Like the libertarian anarchist side of me who sees all the dirty deeds that governments have been doing across the centuries. I just cannot trust these people as the purveyors of this information.
Yeah.
But you've also heard like the stories of like the conflict within the people in the know and that some people want people to know while others want to continue to keep it secret. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's just part of the
or maybe there really is
propaganda
multiple
as well.
Factions of actual aliens that are pushing their own agendas through the leadership.
Yeah. The thing is, like, if people are communicating with them, like, that shit needs to be done in daylight because the last thing I'm going to believe is some freaking press secretary coming out and saying, this is the message the aliens wanted to portray to mankind.
And some highly produced video showing what they're doing, yeah.
Or telling, you know, like secondhand information, what was told to us. And like, and now we're going to believe the press secretary or the CIA. Like, F off. Like, I want direct access to that information. You guys have a history of being untrustworthy, so I'm not going to take the quote unquote truth from your mouths, but because it lines up with at his second point on the first principles thinking, like, I'm already there. So like, that's not a surprise. It's just, I can't get my head around why this disclosure, why
it's
all
so
these
heavily,
whistleblowers are happening the way they're happening and
why
in
they're
such
pointing
a
at each
limited
other.
way.
Yeah. Well, and why they're using each other as evidence.
Right.
That it's real.
Right.
How about we come up with some evidence that is evidence and not just, hey, that guy said the same thing I said. Well, yeah, you both work for the government.
Yeah. Like, I don't count all of you guys coming out as data. If what you're saying so confidently is true, then why don't any of these whistleblowers come out with material? Why don't any of these whistleblowers come out with schematics, with names of the organizations of non-human species?
I say the best evidence, crossover evidence we have is the description that Bob Lazar gave us.
Right.
And then you're seeing the Tic Tac and on all these other videos of the UFO from military stuff, and you see it operates in such a way that it validates some of what Bob was always saying decades ago.
Right. But again, maybe part of the justification is like we've talked about before, which is that if you have gravity drive, you have time travel.
Yeah.
You know?
And you can continuously
and that is extremely dangerous, but I am more scared of it being in the exclusive hands of the government than
without oversight. Yeah. Yeah, at least in the open, it's got oversight in that everybody knows that it's real and everybody knows that it's happening and they can't hide that anymore.
We're not being gaslit by all the Mandela effects popping up anymore.
Right, yeah. Yeah, no kidding. If things are changing, it'd be nice to know that it's happening for a reason.
Maybe we've been asking the wrong person and we need to go talk to Baron Trump.
Well, maybe when he gets older, he'll be a politician and we'll get access to him, or he'll rebel.
Yeah.
And we'll get access to him.
All right, so back to Dan.
He's our first guest, actually. Baron, welcome.
This podcast was recorded 20 years ago and you don't know it. And Baron is actually here from 2024.
Yep. All right, let's continue with Dan Warren.
So what he was building up to is like he's essentially had these two sides of interest, right? Like he had the ancient civilization interest and he had the UFO interest. And based on the new context of the interest and the new data coming out in the UFO leaks and whatnot, his new confidence in it, well, all of a sudden that starts to cast new light on the ancient civilization stuff.
Yeah, the evidence he finds within these ancient civilizations,
right?
Or depictions of them.
Depictions like these classic works of art where what clearly appears to be a UFO.
Shining light down on
god-like creatures with wings, which seems to portray them as being able to fly. Or these depictions that very much look like the Greys, classic Greys. Yeah. And so, I think this is a quote he posts from Lue Elizondo's interview on the Theories of Everything podcast with Kurt Jaimungal, from October 21st, 2021. So you guys go check that out if you haven't seen that interview. But Lue Elizondo asks, what could you create to allow you to prove you we're here a million years in the future? Think about that. If your goal was to leave some sort of mark that you would be that we, us humans here right now in 2024, we're here
would have
a
to
million years in the future, what would you have to do? How could you ensure that whatever you do will last a million years?
Stone being the only thing I can think of.
That's what the line of reasoning he was on. But what Lue says is essentially you would do biomarkers. You would do some sort of markers in DNA. I think the weak side of that argument is that's assuming humans are going to survive. Either that or you better put those biomarkers in the entire biosphere. Because if you just put it in humans, assuming humans are going to make it another million years and then we get hit again with another catastrophe, it may not be humans here a million years from now.
Well, unless you take into account the fact that they very well could have, if they have that capability to engineer or...
Well, we're saying for future humans. Like if you want to leave a message to future future civilization on the planet.
Biomarkers, I see your point about you would want to spread that amongst other living beings.
Right, because it may not be actual Homo sapiens. Maybe humans die and some chimpanzees evolve in a million years to become the next civilization, right? And so if you didn't leave the biomarker in their DNA or in some species DNA that they can find, then they wouldn't find that.
Right.
So
is he
it's
saying
actually
that
a pretty good
there is
idea,
evidence?
but
Is he saying that there is evidence
no,
of biomarkers?
he's just saying that what he's saying is the argument against civilizations in the past, the argument against constant visitations in the past, the argument against it is by archaeologists and scientists is where's the evidence?
Right.
But the thing is like if you sit and actually try and ponder the idea of what could you do to survive, what could you do to make yourself known a million years in the future, there's very few things that will survive a million years.
Yeah,
and I don't even think the pyramids would survive a million years per se. Not with earthquakes, not with catastrophes, not with comet strikes, not with plasma storms, not with tsunamis. And
that's why you diversify.
Right.
You
do it
diversify
all over the
your
world.
message. Yeah, you do it all over the world.
And you do it in different ways.
Yeah, you do it in different ways with different techniques.
Or you put it in the moon.
That could be as well.
Right. Or in some sort of geosynchronous stable orbit, or in one of the
or in the Black Knight satellite.
One of the Lagrange points around Earth. That way it's stable and you don't need a million years worth of fuel to maintain the orbit.
That's the Black Knight satellite, exactly.
Yeah. So here's more of Lue's quotes from Theories of Everything. Imagine everything we've been taught about who we are, our background and our past. What if all of that turned out to be not entirely accurate? In fact, the very history of our species, what it means to be a human being, and our place in this universe, what if all of that is now in question? What if it turns out that a lot of the things we thought were one way aren't? Mm-hmm. Which is very coded speech. Like it's clearly trying to indicate something without giving specifics.
It's trying to infer. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he says, Lue recounts a conversation he had with someone he respected tremendously that told him that humanity was in the middle of the food chain for a long time. And that about 70,000 years ago, something fundamentally changed about our species, was instantly catapulted to the very top of the food chain on our planet as far as predatory animals. And now all of a sudden we became the most feared. We were the most lethal and the most successful.
It's because we defeated the Neanderthals in the war.
Yeah, but that was more recent. The Neanderthals were around in the Ice Age.
Yeah. I know, that's why we're so feared.
Right.
We defeated them.
So he's talking about this 70,000 years ago point, right? And then he's like, well, what happened 70,000 years ago? Well, the Toba catastrophe, Toba supervolcano catastrophe. So check this out. This is a chart of how much magma erupts by volume from different craters, different volcanoes around the world. So you've got like Yellowstone Mesa Falls, Yellowstone Lava Creek, Yellowstone Huckleberry Ridge. That's huge. But the last time it went off was 2.1 million years ago. Most of these are like in tens of thousands
or even like last in
of years ago to millions of years.
1915.
Millions of years ago to hundreds of thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
But the Toba volcano, it
was massive.
It was the biggest, even bigger than Yellowstone, and the last time it erupted was 74,000 years ago. So he's suggesting that maybe what happened 74,000 years ago is this thing goes off, wipes out most of the life on Earth, and we emerge amongst the other hominids as the top of the food chain.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see it.
Which is like, it's interesting. It's like, it's a very similar argument to like the Younger Dryas argument, but like it's just pushed way further back.
Right. I mean, and also that there could be multiple things that could have
Right.
nearly wiped us out.
Right.
An asteroid doesn't need to be the only thing. And
this goes back
especially
to
if this is
Randall's
like-
quote about cycles of catastrophe,
exactly,
right?
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
74,000 years ago, that's a long time before that end of the last Ice Age, so
Right.
this could have been a lot
So he
different.
talks about our near ancestors, like the Neanderthal and the Denisovans, and it shows their skulls next to a modern human and how they had this larger cranium, this larger brain size than we do, and they existed along with us at some point.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, it's not
likely we
far-fetched to
weren't
think
the top of
we
the
weren't
food
most,
chain or the
intellectual.
smartest.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's a lot of evidence showing that we were just cave dwellers. We were the ones hiding and scavenging.
Right.
You know,
right.
we were the scavengers of the humanoids. you
Yep.
know.
And then the other thing is like, who's to say how important the brain cavity size actually is? Because we're starting to find out things like Homo naledi that had a brain 1/3 the size of humans, but displayed intelligence far beyond, according to new discoveries.
Right.
And then it talks about the Boskups and were they smarter than us? I don't know what the Boskups are. I have
Yeah,
to
I've
look that up.
never
I haven't
heard
heard
that
that term. So he suggests, what if it wasn't mankind, but mankind's?
Yeah.
That's a Lue Elizondo quote from that UFO podcast, which he highly recommends.
Yeah, like what if like you kind of laid out in a sense in our previous podcast is like this idea of
Which was
like,
right after I listened to this, so this was
Okay,
heavily
yeah.
inspired by listening to this talk.
But if it wasn't mankind, then it could have been mankind. It's like a previous iteration or a similar humanoid faction that dominated the earth at any point in our history could have, if what he's suggesting is that they were intelligent as we are now. Like if modern humans lived way back then, why did it take so long for them to develop to a point where they could reason, like get to an intellectual point where they could, do advanced stuff, right?
Right.
Like why is that so far-fetched? And if they didn't exactly look like us, or they weren't exactly our ancestors and they were some sort of cousin or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they advanced to a point where they could space travel,
Right.
and everything on all the evidence of their existence was wiped out on Earth at one point, and they didn't have a reason to come back because all of their
Right.
stuff is gone, and
Right.
now they're spacefaring and they have the technology to not come back. And then when they do come back, they're not exactly human anymore. They're not exactly human anymore. And if they were to come back at a pivotal time in our history and help because of their knowledge, or interbreed and create something else, and
Or
all
to
these
just,
stories,
or to just
biblical
use us,
stories
you
and
know?
stuff. Yeah, or to use us, exactly.
Yeah.
Because they were dominant.
Right.
But yeah, let's continue.
So he talks about like the human experience of time, which is that he uses this cigarette analogy where if you got a cigarette that's like only been burned a little bit, okay, the past would be the ash at the end of it.
Hanging on the tip, yeah.
Right. There's only so much past we have, right?
All right.
The present is that actual burning edge, which is a tiny little bit. And then the future is the entire rest of it, which is huge and mysterious. And right. So like our experience is somewhat like this. But it says that what if the either future humans, or what if some non-human intelligence from elsewhere has an experience of time that is more like this picture of the cigarette, where it shows similar the past, but that the present is burning in this whole section. Because they have time travel tech, because they have anti-gravity tech. And so for them, maybe even whether technologically or consciously, they have the ability. For them, the present is something that you can move through.
Right. You can move through the past and present.
And maybe there's like a limit to it. So there is still a past so distant. So kind of think of it this way. Like, you know how the idea of like the Big Bang is expanding and expanding and expanding so fast that there are places in the universe, assuming you can't go faster than the speed of light.
Right.
There are places in the universe that are so distant that even if we leave now, we would never be able to reach them by the time the universe died of heat death.
Right.
They're just so far away. And at some point, the universe will expand so much that even at the speed of light, starlight will never reach us again because they're too far away and they're moving away faster than the speed of light. Right? So in a way, you have this, what's called a light cone. So from your position in space-time, there's a certain cone of the
fuse.
universe.
It's the fuse.
Is the part of the universe that you even could interact with sub light speed.
I see.
So there's it, assuming you can never go faster than the speed of light, there's a circle around us that we could ever interact with, and things beyond that we never ever could ever interact with. So there's
just
like
unfeasible. Yeah.
If you have a giant chunk of what the universe is, you got a small piece of what we could ever interact with ever.
Right. Even with light speed travel.
Right. So if you take this timeline idea with a cigarette, maybe it's something similar where there's past that is so far back that even with your anti-gravity and time travel tech, it's just so far back that you can't interact with it. And then there's future that's so distant that no matter, even with your time travel tech, you can't interact with it. And so that makes your present a wider present than our experience, because you can go back and forth and you can experience, you know, like there's a whole chunk, maybe it's, you know, say 1,000 years, just for example, that but it doesn't within that 1,000 years you can go forward and back, but as you're moving in time, so is that 1,000-year radius of what you can interact with.
It's always equidistant in a sense.
Right.
Huh.
So,
or as time moves forward, there's no, I guess if there's a limit to how far you can and cannot move in time.
Right, but all of those ideas kind of have to be rethought about once you introduce space-time manipulation and faster than light travel.
Well, and also the fact that like it has to be a physical traveling too, but like you got to think of like you were laying out with the expanding universe. Like you have to know exactly where in the universe that you're going to be, right? So this is also like allowing for the physics to be as it is too, right? Like the motion of the universe, the motion of the planets and the sun and everything as it moves through the universe. You know, the model of the solar system spinning around the sun and the sun flying through the universe.
Right. Like if you had the ability,
you have to know the exact coordinates.
If you had the ability to press a button and instantly go back 6 months in the past,
right.
If all you did was travel in time and not space, you would die, because as soon as you press that button, you'd be on the other side of the solar system.
Right.
The Earth would be on the other side of the sun from you instantly, and you'd be out in space.
So you'd have to incorporate a spatial element to it.
Even if you did it exactly 1 year in the past, the Earth travels around the sun, so you just go back exactly in 1 year intervals, and the Earth should be right there, right? Wrong, because the entire solar system is moving through the galaxy. Oh, well, maybe you can only go back in one galactic orbit period. Well, no, because the galaxy is moving through space in the Laniakea supercluster.
So if there was a point in time where everything perfectly realigned, we might be talking about hundreds of millions of years, or even longer than that.
Right.
Where you have to get to the point, but I don't even think that that's possible, because we're not moving in an elliptical path. Like is our universe, or is our galaxy moving in an elliptical path too?
No, not to the best of our knowledge now.
So you might never actually be able to get to that point.
Right.
Unless you're able to lock your...
Unless you can create a UFO and you can,
where you can
create
lock your
a bubble
space.
that allows you through warp drive to move through space
wormholes
faster than the speed of light. And at that point, time starts running backwards, but you're moving, so you can reposition yourself. You know, like you would need to be able to move through space, not just through time, in order for time travel to even work.
Be feasible. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, let's keep going.
So then he talks about David Grush's, one of his congressional testimony, where Grush was saying, trying to explain to Congress that in his opinion, these things may be interdimensional, not just non-terrestrial, but maybe not even from our dimension.
Which I entertain a little bit.
I entertain too, but I have issues with people's definitions of dimension and in what understanding of the word dimension are you talking about? Are you talking about a multiverse? Are you talking about like string theory, which is proposing 11 dimensions, but there's other unified theories that say, no, it's only 4, you know? So like, what do you even mean by that? Like, I don't know. Like, I need you to be specific in how you're using the word dimension.
The one that the idea that I entertain is that UFOs are the interaction between a higher dimensional being and our dimension. So the same way a two-dimensional being would interpret you poking your finger on the surface, the plane that they live on, as being two-dimensional. They would interpret it and see it as being two-dimensional, but in reality, it's a higher dimension in acting. So the visualization I'm thinking of is a flat two-dimensional plane, and there's these spheres kind of rolling through the image.
Yeah.
Right? And then you have the ant or whatever that's living on that plane.
Right.
And they're seeing all of these things moving through their space as a circular thing, but in reality it's a different dimension. It's actually
a sphere.
Or a tubular, like a cylindrical object moving through the space, but they only see it as this circle pattern. Right. And so what we're seeing is like these three-dimensional Tic Tacs, right? They look like dimension. They look like they're in our dimension, like they have the same dimensionality to them. But in reality, they're a higher dimensional thing that's interacting with our dimension, and it looks to us as it appears to be an object that is seeable in our three-dimensional space or four-dimensional, however you want to define it. But
there was a interesting recent Theories of Everything episode with Sean Carroll, who sometimes I can't stand, but this was a good interview because Kurt was able to ask him questions in ways that he would entertain rather than poo-poo, as he's like to do sometimes. And he was talking about how there are some of the newer theories are showing that maybe it's an illusion in the other way, and that the reality is actually less dimensional, and what's actually happening is that we're in a hologram, because holograms can create the illusion of higher dimensionality from lower dimensionality.
Yeah. Like you see a lot of people like the models of a four-dimensional like tesseract or like a higher dimensional tesseract or something.
Right.
And
but
like
this is the opposite of that, which is like everything's actually less dimensional. It just looks three or four dimensional because it's a holographic projection.
Yeah, exactly. The same idea with the like a 4 or 5 dimensional tesseract too, right? It's basically a hologram, like trying to. I guess maybe not entirely, but
yeah,
I see what you mean by that.
Well, like if you have a hologram on a credit card, right, and it looks like there's depth.
Right.
It's got an illusion of being three-dimensional, but it's really two-dimensional. And he's saying that there's actually some physics that is suggesting possibly this 4D world is actually maybe a 2D world, but we have the illusion of it being 4D because of holographic phenomena that's happening.
And our receipt of them, our reception of them, I guess.
Yeah.
Where are we at here on time?
We're at time. There's more to this. He talks about the Chris Bledsoe stuff, which we don't need to go over again because we did a pretty in-depth coverage of that. I'll just hit a couple of these interesting quotes and then we'll wrap it up. This is a quote from John Brenan, former CIA director, November 12th, 2020. It's a bit presumptuous and arrogant for us to believe that there's no other form of life anywhere in the universe. And another quote from him, I think some of the phenomena we're going to be seeing continues to be unexplained and might in fact be some type of phenomena that is the result of something that we don't yet understand, and that could involve some type of activity that some might say constitutes a different form of life. That's such a non-statement.
Yeah, I was going to say that's like a non-answer, but
yeah,
it sounds good to people who are...
Yeah. He makes this interesting point about the Vatican recently changing their norms on how they define supernatural phenomena.
Oh, okay.
Which I'll leave a link to if you're interested in reading up on that.
The lady.
Oh, yeah. The reason he brings up the Chris Bledsoe stuff is to start talking about the lady. He compares it to Lady Fatima, which... our viewer Greg has pointed out.
Yeah.
He also compares it to the legend of the White Buffalo Woman from Native American cultures.
I'd have to read up on that.
Obviously, Hathor and the Egyptians. 'Cause Hathor had a cow
The
form.
White Bull, yeah.
He points out that the Temple of Hathor in Egypt is actually the temple where we find these weird engravings that look like light bulbs. So what the heck is that? He compares her also to Ishtar from ancient Sumeria, who also had like a sort of bull form, I believe is what he said.
It looks like under her feet there. It looks like some sort of like miniature bull thing.
Mm-hmm. And
Gilgamesh.
Yeah, that's where Ishtar
from Sumeria
comes from the epic Gilgamesh. He's got a tweet here from Tom DeLong. Ancient texts seem to have common grouping of patterns that are all connected in intent to describe a control mechanism so different from what we would ever conclude. Don't assume that they are coming from other planets. This is also where the conversation gets disturbing.
And yeah, another cryptic answer, really.
Right. He shows that
Chris Bledsoe is friends with all these guys now.
Is friends with Lue Elizondo or Tom DeLong, or at least they met. He shows himself getting to meet Chris Bledsoe. Says Chris's wife is just an angel. This is some leaked slides from a DoD
presentation.
Yeah, so and he gives one.
That's Chris Mellon, right?
Yeah, this is from a Chris Mellon leak, I believe. So this slide says DoD threat scenario. This is ATIP sub-focus areas. The science exists for an enemy of the United States to manipulate both physical and cognitive environments in order to penetrate U.S. facilities, influence decision makers, and compromise national security. Psychotronic weapons. So these are the types of technology: psychotronic weapons, cognitive human interfaces, penetration of solid surfaces. That you hear that in UFO. You hear the cognitive human interfaces like emotional manipulation,
right?
Psychotronic weapons, which would be, I think, a form of that too.
Yeah.
Instantaneous sensor disassembly. alteration and manipulation of biological organisms, anomalies in the space-time construct, unique cognitive human interface experiences. And then he lists out DoD advantages. DoD has been involved in similar experiments in the past.
Yeah.
DoD has relationships with renowned subject matter experts on these topics. DoD controls several facilities where activities have been detected.
Yeah, I mean, that in itself talks about like the uses it could be used against us, right? Like the ability of potentially, and I mean, to be honest with the political landscape in the world, like who knows if these aren't already being implemented, right?
Right. He has this piece at the bottom of the slide. It says, what was considered phenomena is now considered quantum physics.
Yeah.
Then I went Googling for these slides, and I found some other copies with more slides. This is ATIP preliminary assessments. It says realization that many of the findings, if used against the United States, may prove to be decisive game changers for our country.
Yeah.
Preliminary evidence indicates that the United States is incapable of defending itself towards some of these technologies. The nature of these technologies and the fact that United States has no countermeasures is considered highly sensitive. So this is all part of the reason why this stuff is kept
Under wraps,
classified as well. Then it said, there's another slide here. It says action items. Establish unacknowledged waived SAP with bigoted list to support the ATIP program. DoD SAPCO office. I don't know what that means exactly. Reassign billets, resources, and recommended personnel to a dedicated DoD ATIP support office. Establish DoD ATIP reporting chain of command.
So these are the things that they need to do in order to be more...
To keep working towards...
the goal, I guess, is what he was laying out.
And then another one of the slides that leaked was this map, which has reported events in red, military facilities in blue, and nuclear facilities or equipment in yellow. Okay. So it shows that there's some sort of connection between where we're seeing these events and where military and nuclear bases are. I'll link to a YouTube video with Lue talking about the cognitive interfaces. So he makes the point about anti-gravity also opening the door to time manipulation. He makes some comparisons to Interstellar. He talks about UFO propulsion systems have resulted in the sixth observable, which is biological effects. So it's also responsible for missing time that's reported. So in the past, they've said there was 5 observables for UAPs, which is sudden and instantaneous acceleration, hypersonic velocities without signatures, low observability, transmedium travel, positive lift. And he proposes the 6th, which is biological effects.
Yeah, another leg of that would be like the implants some people have talked about in their abductions.
Yeah. And then he talks about he points out this book, which is something I'd like to read, by Dr. Michael P. Masters, The Extratempestrial Model.
And it kind of incorporates the UFOs into evolution,
which is sort of the idea that maybe they're not extra dimensional. Maybe what they are is actually future humans coming back,
having the technology to come back.
Yeah, interacting with us.
Cool.
So, anyway, it was a pretty cool talk, and I think that was a fun one. So check out Dan Warren. I'll leave links to his social accounts. I believe he does like TikTok and Instagram. I don't know if he has a YouTube channel, but if he does, it'll be linked. So check all that out in the show notes. And yeah.
Awesome.
Give us give us your feedback on what do you think about this UFO episode? Was there any ideas in here that sparked your interest? What are your thoughts on it? Write to us at hosts@dualitycheck.net. I almost said com. Or leave us a comment on YouTube, and
get back to you.
we'll see you guys next week.
Later.
Adios.